I'm being.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Well, anyway, welcome everybody. Welcome Dasmiko. Welcome Miranda. Welcome Harrison. Myself, and Kevin, we are with Kickstart Coding, and this is a presentation to chat about our brand new online coding program. So uh, you can. Oh, didn't mean to select the thing. Let me do that. This is a we're still learning the ropes of doing these events online. We've been in, as I mentioned to Miranda earlier, we have been teaching in person for going on for about like almost, yeah, about 2.5 years by now almost. And now we are transitioning to teaching online, and also we are still learning how to have these events online because we love events. We love especially events that help new folks, new coders get up to speed or at least know where to start. Is one of our favorite things to do in events, is just giving that first few hints of where to start. And because we're still learning, so definitely give us feedback in how this goes, and also do not be shy with questions in chat or unmuting yourself. So right here, yep, right there, we got the Kickstart Coding story, and that's usually like how I like to start these events, and a little bit of an introduction about us. Thanks, Jensen. So a little bit of a introduction about us. So I'm Michael. You can see my black and white photo right here, and you can see the less black and white video here. And then you see Kevin down here. Those are the two folks on this call. I am the founder and lead instructor with Kickstart Coding, but you see that we have two other instructors as well, Mark and Maddie, and we all have done. We've all been teaching and advising and software developing at so many different companies. Myself, I used to teach at Berkeley Extension for a couple of years before this, and then I was also an engineer at many different companies, including I was at Facebook and Microsoft for a little bit each. Not very long, but that was a while ago. But still, after that I worked for a bunch of smaller companies, and now I've kind of transitioned to I guess maybe my true passion, which is imparting all this that I've learned and all these skills that I've developed, imparting those to others, and that's why we're here at Kickstart Coding. So, and as you can see, Mark, Kevin, and Maddie, we all are very passionate about this and teaching again the same thing, teaching folks to code and getting especially folks who are maybe right at the beginning of learning to code and don't even know where to start or where to go. That I think is as an instructor, that's something that's very fulfilling to me, to see someone who is absolutely brand new and just giving them the right direction in getting going. So let's talk a little bit about Kickstart Coding. Right over here, we got this slide. We have so as I mentioned, I was teaching at other coding courses, other coding boot camps, other coding courses here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and my the Mark, the other instructor, was also teaching at some. And if you've done any research into coding boot camps, and I don't know if anyone here has, but you know that the boot camp model, I'm trying to point at the bullet point there, but the bootcamp model tends to have a lot of flaws. Notably, one is these things can be extremely expensive. So $12,000 to $35,000 is the common like price range you'll see with a lot of them. A lot of the ISA type ones are capped at 35,000, and then a lot of the ones that have where you just like pay up front or whatever can often be easily 12 to 15,000, which is a lot of money. And that's not just here in the San Francisco Bay Area, even though this is Silicon Valley, so it's like it's the hub of everything, right? Even though that's the case, you'll see that in many other cities they're still really expensive. So I really love teaching these coding courses, but at the same time I felt that there's a lot of ways that it just excluded people too, because a lot of them require full-time commitments that most people just don't have available. They don't have that time available to devote 60 hours a week into learning to code. So making sure that it is open to existing coders and folks who can code, making sure it's open to brand new people is a really important thing to me. And finally, the thing that really bugged me, and I'm gonna again try to, there we go, right there. There's the outdated technology. So a complaint that I've made, and I'm not the only instructor to have made this complaint before about learning to code, about coding bootcamps, I should say, is that very often their technology that we're learning or teaching, it could be updated a little bit. So that's why we started Kickstart Coding. We wanted we wanted to solve these 4 issues. And I guess we also had a lot of students who tried a different route. We had a lot of students who tried a self-paced learning strategy. So I don't know if anyone here has maybe tried doing YouTube videos or online tutorials, but that's a pretty common route that people try. Now, YouTube videos, tutorials, those are great, but they also have some problems. And although they're really cheap compared to the coding bootcamps, they still have a lot of downsides. Notably, students were saying they had trouble with motivation, the lack of support. Learning to code, and anyone who's taken our course or anyone who's taking a coding bootcamp will say this exact same thing. Learning to code is one of the hardest things you will ever try. All right, it is hard. It is a really hard thing to do. It's not impossible. All right, it's not impossible, but it is a hard thing to do, which means that when you're trying to do a hard thing and you don't have motivation, you don't have support, you don't have a community, that just makes it that much harder. And on top of all of that, when you're just trying to do self-paced learning, it's really hard to know if you're learning something that's out of date, that's fallen behind, or something that is, or if that's relevant to what people are using in the industry. Because without having experienced engineers, it's going to be tricky to know if what you're learning is actually the thing that software companies here in the San Francisco Bay Area or just elsewhere in the world is actually using, if it's up to date, if it's cutting edge. So these were all downsides with self-paced learning that I heard as well. So what we wanted were, as a group of passionate instructors about coding, we wanted to make a part-time, affordable, and inclusive coding bootcamp, one that worked for everybody, so we could keep on teaching and also feel good that we're helping folks learn, and it's not just, you don't feel like it's a ripoff at the end of the day or anything like that. That's the last thing I would want. So how did we do this? So this is the challenge. We want something that's affordable, that works for everyone at different skill levels. That's always a tricky thing I've learned with teaching, is that it's often really hard to gauge skill levels and make sure people are learning at their pace. Everyone has different ways of learning, different paces. And when you're doing a coding bootcamp style course where it's from 0 to 60, right, where you're covering so much ground, the fact that people are at different levels presents an extra teaching challenge. And finally, we wanted to make sure it built modern software engineering skills, not just playing around with some toys or some little toy projects or fake little things. We want to make sure that our students are learning something that they can directly apply to the real problems, real issues that they will be facing as an engineer. So relevant skills. So I'm a total nerd, and I'm also kind of a perfectionist. So we took a very scientific approach to all of this. And you'll notice that we do kind of go overboard with the things we do, this included. And the scientific approach we took was start off with a lot of research. Now, I mentioned earlier in this event that we are just now switching to the online course, and that's true. However, we were thinking about doing an online course even before COVID hit. I would say that when the pandemic hit, it just changed our timetable a little bit. It moved everything up a little bit because it became suddenly way more urgent that we learn how to teach online and deliver this sort of online learning class that fits all of these criteria. It just increased the speed. However, we've actually been researching this for about a year now. In fact, we had a user experience researcher help us out. I've made the habit of paying a few things forward, so to speak, and this particular researcher did us a favor in exchange for myself helping them out in a way, and they helped us out with a kind of thorough research into how to build an online course that solves all of these issues, like that actually does these things. And we want to succeed where others have failed or others have made mistakes. Now, you can see on this slide, there's a bunch of pages up here. These are all there's 9 pages of research that was produced, which is, I think, pretty impressive. And then we also did some software usability surveys on our LMS software. I'll get to that later, but we did a little bit of research into how to make a effective and efficient software platform. And you see on this next slide, this is a word cloud that is of all the things that people talked about. Not surprisingly, online course stuff, I guess, is all words that people use. But I guess the more important thing on this slide is these little snippets that I took out from all our research. So we interviewed students, we interviewed instructors to try to figure out what is not working, what is working with the way people do online teaching right now. So what works, what doesn't, how can we fix it? That's what we're trying to do. And you can see a few tidbits I got here was the one thing that I heard from a lot of students is that when they were taking an online course, I talked with some folks who had taken online coding boot camps before, and they felt disconnected. And they felt that not only just disconnected with their instructors or with other students, but disconnected with just even what they're learning itself. They felt that it was stitched, all these different things, like it was Google Docs, it was Slack, it was all these different technologies all stitched together, and it was sometimes really hard to find information. They felt a little bit like lost what they were supposed to do next. I also found folks who said that they need somebody. They just need someone telling one what to do. Like one of our earliest kind of alpha or beta testers, this is a quote from them, who tested our course months ago before we officially launched. They said that they had gotten an associate's in web design, in fact, and so I think it was in web design, and they were, but what they had learned in school just wasn't really relevant to what they were trying to, like all the jobs that were out there, what they were trying to apply for. And furthermore, because they were ready, there was no like help that they got from their school to actually like learn how to even apply for them. So like, we gave them our career advice and our help about how to do this sort of thing, where to even apply, where to even start with switching your career. And that was a big pain point, because they just didn't even know how to do the job applications or the interview process or any of that those nuts and bolts of how to actually make this career change. Because if you're not familiar with coding or the tech industry, then you're just probably there's a good chance you might approach the job application process wrong too, or just not even know where to begin. And that's another thing that we wanted to make sure we could instruct and help students with, is that sort of just experience of that, we've all been there before, but you haven't. So that's what we wanted to help you out with, or help students out with. And then I guess one other really important thing is that we found a lot of students just need somebody to be mean to them. People need folks to be mean to them, because it's hard to learn something, and you kind of need someone to be like accountable to, or to have that pressure on you about actually learning the material. So those were all kind of the input that we got about building it. We also got some really good input from just interviewing instructors. So the one thing we got from that, a few things. One is just the difficulties involving online teaching and the tools available for online teaching. So that was a big issue that we wanted to tackle, and I'll get to that, how we tackled that later. But we also, one thing that we got or some feedback that we got of stuff that we're doing right, that we would not want to stop doing, we want to keep on doing this right, is the small team, small feedback loop feedback. So in-person teaching, you get immediate feedback from people in the class. And with smaller classes, like our course is really small, was really small. We only like in our in-person courses, we only have about 20 students in the classroom with 2 instructors. So you get that really close in-person feedback from students. And because we also have a small team in another sense, so for folks who are on the either on the stream or on the Hangout right now, so you here this is our entire staff. It's all 4 people, and how many do you think this is going to be kind of a silly question maybe, but how many do you think of these people have done curriculum development, have taught before, have done enrollment management and admissions, and have done what other things? TAing. Yeah, okay. I think those are kind of the things we do. I don't know, but those are the things. How many of those 4 things? How many people here do you think have done all 4 of those? All of them. Yes, correct. So yeah, all of us do everything. That's kind of the small feedback loop we're talking about. Thank you, Miranda. That is exactly correct. So, whoops. There we go. Put that back there. So, yes, I'm going to go ahead. All 4 of us. I don't know why I circled our faces, but that somehow like emphasizes it, I think. So all 4 of us have done everything, and I think that keeping the team small, keeping everybody working on everything is how we just make our system even better, because everyone knows how everything else works, and we're a small team that has that feedback loop where we're constantly improving. So how do we do all of this? We've gotten all this research. We know what the pain points are. We know how we can improve. Introducing Kickstart Coding Online. This is what we came up with in the end. So what we created was what we are calling a custom-paced coding bootcamp. So we have kind of on one end of the spectrum, we have full-time coding bootcamps, and those are the ones that you see advertised a ton. I know like here in the Bay Area, there's like billboards all over the freaking place about these things, but I bet elsewhere there is definitely a lot of ads that will follow you around about them. And these full-time coding boot camps, they are great in that they are very rigorous and they really put you through your paces. But the downside is they tend to be expensive, as I mentioned earlier. 12K to 12 to like 35K or so, give or take. And then they are restrictive, so like existing coders only usually, so like, no noobs, and inflexible. So like they often have 60 plus hour requirements. Even the ones that are part-time usually have like 30-hour a week requirements, or even 40-hour. Like a lot of the ones that I know, I was teaching one that was part-time too at Berkeley Extension, and students were a little bit shocked that by part-time they mean about 40 hours a week or so. So that even the ones that are part-time tend to be very strict, very inflexible. So as kind of a in-between, but then I guess let me start with the other side of the spectrum. We have self-paced learning. So this would be like Udemy and Coursera, all of these different platforms that are great because they tend to be very cheap. Like you can get a course on Udemy for $10, and that's awesome. $15. A lot of them are pretty cheap, but also like free YouTube-based ones. There's a lot of free YouTube ones. But of course, the issue you get with self-paced learning is you have no support, no community, and you don't get that motivation of someone kind of metaphorically breathing down your neck and making sure you actually learn the material. So lack of that feedback is really a shame. So that's how we came up with the custom-paced platform and system. So with the custom-paced idea is that we want to bring in the structured learning that you get with a full-time course rigor and rigor and realistic learning you get from that. And then the most important thing I think in a coding course that you're taking online isn't live lectures, because with the custom paced one you do not have live lectures, you just have video based lectures. It isn't actually the live lectures, but it's actually the one-on-one tutoring and live review sessions that I feel are the most helpful for folks learning. Watching a lecture could be a video, it could be live, but that actually, especially with lectures where you're not really feeling like you can participate much online, that's going to be kind of, 6 of one, half a dozen of another. It's not going to have a big difference. But where the real impact is getting that one-on-one help with someone who's you're accountable to, weekly. So it's weekly tutoring sessions, and then weekly review sessions as well, group review sessions as well. And also an online community that is right now very small, but we're still growing in terms of kind of having other peers to learn from. Then finally, because of this kind of hybrid structure, we managed to bring the price down to $299 a month. So that's much cheaper. And I will say that I know we're very biased because we invented all this and we're trying to make it really good. But I will say that that is indeed the cheapest we've found of anything that's similar to it. So we are actually trying to make this as affordable as possible, because I think most people who are trying to learn to code, I don't know about you all, but most people who are trying to learn to code, typically you don't have a ton of money to blow on this. Typically you're doing it because you want to improve your career, or maybe even part of that improving your career involves getting more money, right? So typically you aren't going to have a ton to blow. And now I know this is not cheap by any means, but it is hopefully at least affordable, and definitely more affordable than the thousands and thousands, like the several thousand a month you would expect from the full-time course. So that's what we've done with the custom paced one. And I guess one thing I didn't mention, this custom thing I'll actually, wait, I've got another slide. Yeah, here we go. So same things I already pretty much said, but one thing I didn't mention was the personalized aspect. I'll get to that again in a minute, but we made a system where you can actually pick how many hours a week you have, and we'll try to hold you accountable to that amount. And then you'll get a learning plan that fits with that number of hours. So if you're brand new to coding, you've got kids, a job, and life, and all of that kind of is in your life. And then which means you only have maybe a few hours every evening to devote to this, like say 10 hours a week. We'll figure out a plan for you. You'll still be able to do it. You'll be able to do the same material as anyone else. It'll just take longer, obviously. Obviously, you can't just make it faster, right? But it will just take longer. So that's kind of what we're trying to do with that. And then finally, for anyone who knows a bit about coding, we are really serious about making this cutting edge. We actually have a few blog posts, including one that kind of mildly blew up about how we did this, about how we keep our code up to date, or keep our curriculum up to date. And I would say the most up-to-date curriculum. Again, we're a little bit biased, but as far as I can tell, we are very up-to-date in terms of what we're teaching. Definitely judging by the reaction from the blog post, we actually got a few people who are like, oh, I wish my coding course did that. Was one comment I just read today, this morning, in fact, about our React with hooks upgrade. Someone was like, mentioned something like that. So we do try to keep things up to date. And ultimately, we are just super, super passionate about making this coding school accessible for everybody. So, I mean, that's back in the old days, as you can tell, of how it was to teach. But again, we want a coding school that is available for everyone and accessible for everyone, and that's what we're doing. So, cutting edge, I mentioned we teach Python on the back end, and you can see that this is you'll find a ton of other charts just like this, but you can see that Python is the language to learn for 2020. It is and beyond, it is a language that is not only popular with web development, but it's also popular in AI, data science, all these other fields. Python is not only popular with it, Python is it, pretty much. Like, Python is AI, is data science. There's not a lot of other options. There's a few older options for data science, but everybody's using Python. And not only that, though, it's also really popular for web development, which is what we use to teach it. And it's also a good beginner's language. That's the main reason we teach it. It has nothing to do with how popular it is, but because it is good for beginners. So it's good for advanced folks, it's good for beginners, and everybody in between. Also, it's my favorite language. So it's all of those. And then, as I mentioned, we have upgraded our curriculum to use hooks, which is, if you've done anything with React, you know, is the latest and hottest and greatest. And we also use modern JavaScript first. So again, if you're brand new to coding, you don't know what any of these words are, that's fine. You will learn that. You can learn that. We will tell you how that works. But if you do know a little bit about coding, you'll know that if you've maybe tried teaching yourself or looking up online, you'll know that a lot of JavaScript tutorials out there still are using these kind of older syntaxes like var instead of something else. So we try to at least, it's not like you won't learn anything from those. That's still fine to learn that. But we want to make sure our students start with, indeed, what is the most popular in the industry right now versus what was really popular like 8 years ago or something. Personalized, I mentioned we have a really unusual option that I think we're the only coding course that does this, to my knowledge, that we will take in your input, your requirements, and build a custom schedule just for you, which means you'll be in the same class with other folks learning it, but they might be learning at a different pace. So you'll still be able to talk with other people or chat with other people who are learning this material, but your pace will be your own pace of learning it, and you'll still have a structure. You'll have due dates, and there's exams, there's the whole thing, quizzes, and all of that. But when you take those is going to be up to your schedule versus up to somebody else's. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, that's an example of exactly this. And actually, while I'm at it, why don't I post in... You want to post... I'm going to post actually in... Actually, Kevin, could you post in the Twitch chat a link to online... the online link, online.kickstartcoding.com. We have a few viewers on Twitch, too. We're trying different platforms here for folks who are joining us via Google Hangouts. This actually I just mentioned this is the thing right here. So we actually create a custom schedule just for you that has a where you can actually where your due dates, your events with tutors and all of that show up right there. So you have like when you have to get stuff done, when you have your scheduled events, when you have office hours, and all of that can actually be exported to your Google Calendar too, so you can get notifications and just kind of it's as close to a real class as we can. That's what we're trying to do. This is a real class. I just realized what I said. This is a real class, but it is as close to an in-person class as we can. That's what we're trying to do. As I mentioned, affordable. So it's a $2.99 a month pay-as-you-go system. And I realize I'm low on time, so I'm going to just go on right to the next slide here. We also like to steal a lot of cool ideas from other coding courses. So most of these are actually not really stolen. Most of these are our own thing, but some are stolen. We're stealing some good ideas from other courses and also kind of coming up with some of our own. Notably using your own ideas for portfolio building projects. So we want to make sure whatever you're working on for the course is something that you care about. That's about you. That's about your interests. So all the work you will do for the course that's like homework or submitted is going to be your ideas. And then you'll have a real live human being grade that thing and give you feedback on it. And then a real life human being one of us, to be clear, not just any real life human being, but one of the instructors. And then we also have online quizzes. We have printable quizzes, printable cheat sheets for every module. So you have like material, online reading assignments. So you've got more stuff to read, more resources. And then finally, we want to cement backend and computer fundamentals first. So we don't want you to go on to flashy stuff before you get the fundamentals in. And then one final thing too is we only support Mac and Linux, but if you are a Windows user, we will help you get started even there. Linux is a thing you can install on Windows, so that's one of the ways we can help students who are completely beginners and maybe not want to going out and buying a Mac because Macs are really expensive. And I mentioned earlier that we really went all out, boy, did we. So we wrote our own learning management software, LMS, because we kind of surveyed all of the ones out there. And I mean, we're a bunch of engineers, so we're like, hey, if these don't work, let's make our own. And that's what we did. So we looked at all other learning management softwares out there, and honestly, every other coding bootcamp I've worked at, and every other coding bootcamp other instructors have worked at, they've all done the same thing, just because the software out there isn't good enough for running a online course. So we wrote our own, which is this live syllabus software, and I'll demo that actually in one moment, so you can see what it looks like. And that's it. That's it for my presentation. Any questions from anybody before I go on to demoing our platform and our curriculum?